Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome to another one of my devlogs. This is the first time I've upgraded my studio a little bit. I've got a nice little Tamron lens in my camera and other little gadgets to help me record. Hopefully the improved quality will help offset the relatively tiny scope of this game project that I'm working on. Since the last episode I was able to add a win condition to the game, as well as a condition in which you can get to a game over screen. However, these were the easy stuff. What really took a lot of time was trying to figure out how to make the game fun. Just like in Super Mario, they don't have fixed collisions around the tile, they don't have pixel perfect collision, rather, they allow quite a high leeway for the player to bump into like a block above his head, and the game will actually push Mario out of the way and make him like slide a little around the edges of that tile. The reason for that is I believe that it allows the player to be in this flow state where he jumps, runs around, and physics will not get in the way. The reason for the physics in that game is that they give you the rules of the world, so you know you need to adapt to those rules. However, they're not a perfect simulation, so they actually only kick in when you actually made a mistake. Sort of like if you didn't intend to hit the block and you're kind of out to the edge, it will actually allow you to go past it. It's not gonna block you, it's not gonna stop you from enjoying that jump, because it's trying to figure out, so the game is trying to figure out what you meant, not what you did. So to better illustrate this, I will now show you a little video of actually how it's done in Mario. So let me open up this video. If you look closely, Mario slides out of the way, so he jumps up, the player would actually hit this margin, of course the collision should kick in, but the game designers actually make them slide to the left, so it goes out of the way, because most likely jumping from here the player's intentions were to maybe jump on top of these blocks, not hit it. So to illustrate this in my game, you would see that here the player is faced with like these 3 consecutive jumps, and what ended up happening when I used the old version was that he made it over the first one, then the second one, and maybe he bumped into this one on his way up, because it's really hard to time it perfectly so the jump falls in the middle. And the reason for this thing was that I used box colliders around each object, and box colliders are way too tough to handle this job. And what ends up happening is that the player will get caught on the outside jump. So maybe he gets over here, he already pressed the button to jump and it would jump over this obstacle, but when the physics simulation comes in, the actual trajectory would hit the bounding box of this object and would make the player fall down. So here the player's intention was misinterpreted by the game, and what the player ends up feeling is that something is not quite right in your game, because he correctly pushed the button, he was aware that an obstacle is coming, in this case the third one, he pushed the jump button, and then the game decided for whatever reason not to give him the positive feedback for actually making the jump. And this is why as game designers we need to gamify the physics. So the way I implemented this gamification of the physics engine was to make a small collider around this object. If you see, I intentionally made it so it's a little bit smaller on the edges than the edge of the object, and also not that high, and on top of that I made sure that the collision that will cause the game to penalize the player for making a mistake is smaller. This way, if the player jumps on top of this obstacle, it's considered correct and will not fall down. Of course, having it like this would mean that the player would fall through this object later, and that is why I actually added a second object with a second larger collider this time. So this one would not trigger the player to fall down, it's only there to act as an invisible boundary which does not allow the player to fall through. This is just so the player doesn't go through the actual object. This one is left in a default state, it's not a trigger, so the character controller will end up stopping the player from falling through, while the other collider is strictly there for keeping track of the score, the game's rules. Of course, I had to do that for all of the objects that I have. Here you can see as well this log is, again, the sides are much more lenient to go through. Or this fence. Let's look again. So, well, this one actually is pretty close because it's a very skinny object, but still I want him to be able to land on top of it, and just a little bit of this object should cause the player to stumble. And the same goes for all of the other obstacles that I have in the game. So there's the smaller collider, and then behind it there's a larger one which actually stops the player from falling through. The final two things I added in this build to the game were actually quite fun. They are the game over and win conditions. Let's try to set the game length to like 10 seconds, and I will show you first the game over conditions. So I've set the game to 15 seconds, and let's see how it looks. Here we go. So I start the game and we have like 15 seconds. And 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the player does this little animation where he gives up. So right now the game condition for win is set to 800 meters. So whenever the player has run 800 meters, the end castle will spawn, and once he reaches it, then he wins the game. So just to test this out, let's set it to like something small like 50. Here we go, and also the game length is 90 seconds, so that's correct. We can actually try it out. So here we are in game, let's start. There we go, we have plenty of time, and now we have to run 50 meters before the castle will be spawned. There we go, we just hit the 50-meter mark. And let's see in the distance soon, there should be a castle. Here we go, it just came into view. And the closer we get, let's see a couple more obstacles, and here we go. So as soon as he gets there, we get this little win animation. We have reached the church or castle or whatever, and we have this little YMCA animation. I've been doing game development as a hobby for a long time, I would say more than 10 or 15 years, but I hate to say it, but this is the first time I have ever finished a game. It's not a big game, but it does have a start condition, a win condition, a lose condition, and you can give it to someone and he can play it from start to finish, have a little fun. The game length obviously is 1.5 minutes, so it's really short, the scope was really small, but hey, this is where you have to start, somewhere small. This concludes this episode of the DevLog. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed watching this as much as I had making it. See you in the next one. Have a lovely day.